Okay, let's add a script. We'll program our player character so that it'll actually do something. So we'll right click on that character and we'll select add script. Okie dokie. What do we want to do? What do we want to do in here? What do we want our player to do? We want our player to be able to move around when we press some keys on the keyboard. How about that? So we need to go to events to start off. We want, under our keyboard section, we want when key is pressed, when backspace delete is pressed. That's how we can trigger, that's the triggering event for when a keyboard key is pressed. So we'll grab that out, when backspace delete pressed from events, and change backspace delete to, what key should we start with? Let's do the right arrow first. Right arrow. If you wanted to use WASD, you could do that as well. You would want to select D. I'm going to use right arrow. Okay, and what do I want it to do when I press the right arrow? Well, I want to move, right? All of our movement commands are from physics under motion. We've got set velocity x 0. Let's grab that. Set velocity x 0. Grab that out. Now, velocity x means sideways horizontal movement or speed, and 0 is standing still, so we'll change this to 200. 200, that'll make us move to the right. That's right. We're setting up our first input right here. When we press a key, that's an input, and then moving an object, that's an output. Okay, let's test this out. We've got something going. So if we click play, we want to give a name to the script. Let's call it player controls. We can save that. And if we press the right key, we can see our player moves, and it also pushes some things aside. Cool, but that's just our right key. Let's get our up, down, and left key working as well, so we can actually move in some different directions. Okay, if we close our game and go back to our script, we can grab this block and right click on it to duplicate it and get some copies. We want 4 directions for events. So we've got right arrow. What about left arrow? Let's do that. And then down arrow and up arrow. Right, left, down, up. Okay, so right arrow moving 200 x velocity was good. Left arrow is going to have to be the opposite of that. What's the opposite of 200? Not 0, because 0 is standing still, so it'll have to be minus 200. Negative 200 to go to the left. Now we've got down and up. What are we going to do with those? Well, down and up aren't horizontal, are they? So it can't be the x axis. So we'll click on X here, change that to a Y. Y is vertical. So down and up, Y velocity. Now, down is a positive velocity and up is a negative velocity. So that's looking good. Let's test that out. So that's right is x 200, left is x negative 200, down is y 200, and up is y negative 200. We'll give that a test. So I can move up, down, left, right. I can push all of these objects around, and I am moving, and I'm not stopping when I release the key. So what I want to do is, and also you might have noticed that there was a bit of bugginess how I could kind of leap through walls. We'll fix up the collisions on some of these objects. We'll fix up our player movement, and then we might make some of these things able for us to walk through as well. We'll disable some of their physics. So let's close out of that. So we've got our movement working when we press these keys. Something I noticed about my movement was that it just continued on even when I had released the key. So let's adjust that by adding some more blocks. We're going to say when a key is released, we're going to make our velocity set back to 0. So let's say when right arrow is released, set velocity x to 0. We want to duplicate our blocks, and I'm going to put copies of them next to the originals. So the ones over on this side, I'm going to change the pressed to released. So that'll detect when all of those keys are released. And then I want to set their velocities to 0. So when I release the right arrow key, I'll stop moving horizontally. Same with the left arrow key. And then up and down, my Y velocity, I want to set to 0 when I release those keys. I'll give that another test that looks good. Right x0, left x0, down y0, up y0 for when I release the keys. Let's play that. And the movement feels a bit better. Still push things around. We will fix that next. And if I go and collide with a wall, you'll probably notice you can pop through it. So let's do the wall glitch first, and then we will do the non-collidable objects. Let's close that. Now we'll close out of the script, and we will save this game. File, save. Okay. Now, the reason why I can pop through walls when I go and walk into them is my walls and my floors are both solid and collidable objects. But because I started inside the floors, it is allowing me to move around. I need to collide with the edge of a collidable object for it to actually trigger the collision. So what I'll do is change my floors so they don't actually collide, which would make sense, right? Your floors shouldn't be solid. So over in my layers panel here, I'm going to select my floors layer and then click this little icon, the grid icon next to floors. And by clicking it, it says tile map collision off, which is what I want. Tile map collision off, and the line will be struck through that icon. Okay, so the floors are not solid now. Let's give that another try. And now I can walk up to walls and it won't pop me through them. So the floors are behaving nicely and the walls are behaving nicely. I can still push these objects around though. So I want to make it so that these kind of cracks on the floor, that I can't collide with them. And I want to make it so that things like the table, the pot, the shelf, and the columns are solid collidable objects. So I'm going to script those two different kinds of objects now. I'll close my game. And first I'll do the non-solid objects. So let's right click on one of those non-solid objects. You might have something else that you've used. Maybe you want something like rocks for you to be able to walk through. Depending on where you are in the level, that might be appropriate. Same thing with stairs. You probably want to be able to walk through those. So I've got this non-solid object. I'm going to right click on it and add a script to it. Now, I am going to give this object some behavior when it is created. If we go to events, we want to grab when created. And we're going to say disable my physics when I'm created. And the objects all get created just before the level starts. So to disable the physics, we want to go to physics. And down the very bottom, we have set physics enabled true. Let's change that to false. When it's created, its physics will not be enabled. Good. Do we need anything more from that? No, that's a pretty simple script there. So we can close this script and it'll ask us to save it. Let's save it as not solid. Done. Okay, now if I hover over that object, I can see it's got a little script icon there, which is the not solid script. But my other not solid script does, my other not solid object doesn't have that script yet. So I'm going to go up to the top of my sidebar here and select code and grab my not solid code by clicking on it. And then I am going to click to attach that programming to this object as well. So if I play this now, we would see that I can walk through them and they don't collide. So that's good for non-solid objects. Now, what about my solid objects? Don't want to be pushing around tables or columns that should be holding up the ceiling. That would be pretty OP character. So let's close that and make a new script for solid objects. So I'll right click on this table and add a script to it. Now we want to do a pretty similar thing. We want to say when created, that's from events, when created. And then from physics, we want a different block in here. We want set immovable to true. That means it can't be moved. Set immovable to true down the bottom of physics. When created, set immovable to true. And again, pretty simple script. We can close that and save that, and we'll call this one solid object. And then my table has that script, but my other solid objects don't. So again, code, sidebar, click on solid object script, and click to attach that script to all of my solid objects. And I've got some down here as well, don't I? Click, 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 click. I think the chains will be not solid. I'll be able to walk over those. And make that solid, not solid chains. Okay, let's save this. And give it a play. All right, solid objects are sitting in place, very nice. Non-solid objects are also sitting in place and I can't collide. That's good. And now I have a new challenge to overcome. That's I can't see my player as they move around outside of the starting area. So what I am going to do is get my camera to constantly follow my player. So let's go and do that now. Close that game, and I will right click on my player and edit the script on them. Okay, I'm going to add a new block down here to constantly update the position of the camera, and that constantly block is in events. Events constantly. Drag that out. Constantly runs every frame. So every frame it'll be ticking and executing whatever blocks are in here. So if your game's running at 30 frames or 60 frames per second, then that's how many times this will execute. Then we want to be centering the camera on this player. That block is from looks. All of our camera blocks are in looks. If we scroll down, we want, under camera lock, we want center camera on myself. Center camera on myself. Inside constantly, and that's what we need. Let's play that. And now if I move around, I can see perfect. My player is in the center of the screen, and I can actually go and navigate the whole game. So far. Pretty cool. Nice. Okay.